Elias Thorne arrived at Glass Harbor that evening feeling like a man walking toward another disappointment rather than a date that might hold the smallest chance of connection. At 35, he had more money than he could ever spend, yet less trust in people than he had at 20 when he still believed effort and kindness could earn sincerity. The soft hum of conversations in the restaurant pressed in on him as he followed the hostess to the secluded table his assistant had insisted on reserving. The low lights caught the faint shine of the burn scar that trailed from his left ear to the line of his collar. He felt the usual shift in the air as the hostess glanced at it, then looked away with polite speed. He had grown used to that tiny pause the way people tried not to notice and still did. He sat down and rehearsed lines he knew he would never use. Compliments he could not say without sounding insincere stories he would never tell again because vulnerability had cost him too much. He traced the rim of his water glass as he waited and reminded himself that he had agreed to this meeting only because his closest friend had insisted he try one more time. One more attempt at being seen as someone worth knowing beyond the Billionaire label or the scar that made strangers stare. When Harper Cole walked into the restaurant, she looked like she had come straight from a long shift. Her hair was loosely tied back, her scrubs replaced by simple jeans and a sweater that still somehow carried the quiet confidence of someone who had no energy left for pretenses. She approached the table with a cautious smile that did not try to hide its exhaustion. Elias stood automatically, and she blinked in mild surprise as if she had expected him to stay seated the way most men on blind dates did. She sat down, smoothing her hands over her jeans, then looked up at him fully. Her eyes lingered on his and not on his scar. In that moment, he felt something shift, something he could not name. Without meaning to, Harper asked a question that seemed to fall straight from her mind rather than from any script people used for first dates. Do you want honesty or do you want comfort? The words were so simple, yet they disarmed him completely. He had prepared for polite interest, forced small talk, and the practiced warmth people used when they wanted something from him. He had not prepared to be asked what he actually needed. He stared at her, unsure whether to laugh or walk away, but there was no mockery in her face, only sincerity that felt strangely grounding. She winced and shook her head. "I am sorry, I should not have said that. Long day. Very long week, actually." Elias surprised himself by answering softly. "Nobody's ever been real with me. You just were." Harper looked at him as if reassessing him beyond headlines, beyond assumptions. "I was not trying to be bold. I just do not know how to play pretend anymore." Elias felt the words settle in him like a truth he had been waiting to hear for years. He tried to steer the conversation back to safer ground, asking about her day, and she answered with the same simple honesty that had startled him moments before. She told him she worked 2 jobs, one as a rehabilitation nurse, and one at a small cafe to make ends meet while raising her 6-year-old daughter, Maddie. She did not speak with bitterness, only with the steadiness of someone who had learned to survive reality without dressing it up. When she asked about his work, he kept it brief, refusing to let the conversation turn into a recitation of his accomplishments. Instead, he mentioned the field he was in, rebuilding infrastructure for communities affected by disasters. She nodded thoughtfully rather than impressed. For the first time in years, Elias felt himself unclench. He noticed the tired curve of her shoulders, the way she sipped water, as if reminding herself to stay awake, and the way she looked him in the eye without flinching. She was not dazzled or intimidated. She was simply present. When the waiter came, Harper ordered a modest meal, and Elias followed her lead, resisting the urge to overcompensate. As they ate, Harper asked gentle questions, ones that did not pry, ones that felt like conversation instead of assessment. Elias found himself answering more than he intended, admitting small truths like how much he hated the attention his position brought, how strangers felt entitled to judge his face, and how rare it was to sit across from someone who did not treat him like an object of curiosity. Harper listened without pity, and when he paused, she asked quietly, "Does it still hurt?" Elias felt his breath catch. She was the first person in years to ask the question without fear, disgust, or intrusive interest. Just care. Sometimes, he admitted, he But not in the way people think. She nodded, as if she understood more than his words revealed. For the first time, Elias felt the evening was not a performance, not a routine, not another failure waiting to happen, but something fragile and unexpected slowly forming between two tired souls who did not want to be judged. And when the check came, Harper reached for her wallet instinctively, and Elias felt something warm break open in him. He did not let her pay, but the gesture mattered. As they left the restaurant, Harper paused at the door, studying his face with a gentle focus that made him feel startlingly seen. "I hope tonight was not too heavy," she said softly. He shook his head. Tonight was honest, and that is rare. She smiled faintly and walked with him toward the exit, quietly waiting. Harper Cole stepped onto the cool evening sidewalk with the lingering weight of the strange, unexpected honesty between them pressing against her ribs like a reminder she had not asked for. She walked beside Elias in silence for a moment, letting the city lights fill the space between them while her mind replayed the question she had asked without thinking. Does it still hurt? She had not meant to be intrusive. She had simply spoken the way she always did when something felt human and unpolished and real. And Elias had not run. Instead, he walked with the careful, steady steps of someone who had spent years measuring every reaction from others and still somehow chose to stay. She glanced at him as they waited for the crossing signal, and in the glow of the red light she saw it again, the long-healed burn scar following the curve of his jaw disappearing beneath his collar. It was not grotesque, and it was not frightening. It was simply evidence of survival, and yet she could tell he had been treated like it defined him more than anything he had achieved. When the light turned green, Harper stepped forward and felt him walk beside her, keeping pace as if afraid she might slip away into the night if he left too much space between them. She took a breath, steadying herself before she spoke. "You do not have to tell me if you do not want to." "I should not have asked about the scar." Elias kept his eyes forward, but his voice was calm. "You asked like a person, not like a spectator. That is different." They crossed the street, and Harper tucked her hands into the pockets of her jacket, feeling the cool air kiss her fingers as if urging her to keep walking, keep breathing, keep letting this strange moment exist even if she did not know what it meant. Maddie had spent months asking why grown-ups lied so much, why people pretended to smile, why some adults whispered louder than they talked. Harper had never known how to answer except to say, "People get scared, and when they are scared, they hide." She wondered if Elias had been hiding for most of his life. "Tell me about it only if you want to," she said gently. "Not because I asked. Because you want to be honest." Elias exhaled slowly, the sound both weary and steady like someone pushing open a door they had kept locked for too long. "I was 24, he began, and she felt the shift in the air as his voice dipped into memory. "Back then, I was just an engineer, working in a research facility outside Denver. We were testing a new structural polymer for emergency response units, something that could withstand extreme heat and pressure." He paused, and Harper felt herself listening more closely, her heart tightening, as if preparing for the weight of what came next. There was a failure in one of the pressure chambers. A seal that had passed every inspection fractured without warning. The system overheated faster than anyone could react, and then the shockwave ripped through the lab. Harper swallowed because even without the details she could feel the moment imprinting itself into him, the way traumatic memories always etched themselves into bone and breath and the way a person walked. "I remember the sound before I felt anything," he continued. "Then the pain hit all at once like someone set fire to every nerve in my face. I do not remember falling, but I remember trying to get my coworker out." He hesitated, and Harper heard the weight of grief that still lived inside him like an echo that refused to fade. "My best friend was with me," he said quietly. "I got 2 people out, but not him." Harper stopped walking, then turned fully toward him as people moved around them like a quiet river of strangers unaware of the story unfolding between 2 tired souls in the middle of the city. "It was not your fault," she said immediately instinctively, as if the words were pulled straight from something deeper than logic. "You tried to save him. You did save others." Elias met her eyes, and she saw the truth sitting heavy behind them. His family never believed that he said. They blamed me. They said I should have saved him first. Harper felt her breath catch because she recognized that kind of guilt, the kind that digs into a person long after the world thinks they have healed. She reached out without thinking, then stopped herself because touching him felt too intimate too soon. Instead, she let her voice steady with the quiet certainty she had learned through years of helping others rebuild their bodies and their spirits after injury. People say cruel things when they are grieving, she said gently. Pain makes people forget what courage looks like. The scar is not your failure. It is the proof you fought to survive. Elias blinked as if her words landed somewhere he had not expected to be touched. Most people see the scar first, he murmured. You looked at me before you looked at it. Harper gave a small, tired smile. When you are a nurse, you learn to look at people, not wounds. They resumed walking, but the silence between them was no longer heavy. It felt like space, something new, forming something that asked to be acknowledged but not forced. Harper spoke again, her voice quieter this time, as if admitting something she rarely let herself say out loud. My husband died when Maddie was a baby. He left a lot of debt, more than I knew. It messed with me in ways I still do not fully understand. I do not trust easily, and rich men especially. Elias listened with the same attentiveness she had given him earlier, not interrupting, not trying to fix anything, simply absorbing the truth she offered him. You have your own scars, he said. She nodded. Different ones, invisible ones, but still there. They reached the corner where their paths would split, and for a moment neither moved. Elias looked as if he wanted to say something, but held it back as if unsure he had the right. Harper inhaled and felt the fragile thread of honesty tying them together, something tender and unfamiliar and unexpectedly safe. I am not promising anything, she whispered, because she needed to set the boundary for both of them. But tonight felt real. That is all I can say. Elias nodded slowly, the faintest shift of hope crossing his face. Real is more than I have had in a long time. Harper stepped back, preparing to walk the remaining block alone, but his last words followed her like a warm echo. Thank you for being honest, he said. Thank you for not looking away. She turned just once and saw him still standing under the streetlight, looking like a man who had not expected anything true to happen, and yet had been changed by a single evening where two wounded people dared to speak without their masks. Elias woke the next morning with the unmistakable awareness that something had shifted inside him, a sensation that felt both unsettling and strangely alive, as if someone had opened a window in a long, sealed room. He lay still in the muted gray light of his penthouse bedroom, staring at the ceiling while the echo of Harper's voice threaded itself through the quiet. I am not promising anything. Tonight felt real. He had not heard sincerity spoken so plainly in years. Most dates he attended felt like scripted interviews where the other person measured every word to maximize their gain, whether it was status or security, or the thrill of being seen beside a billionaire. His name attracted people far faster than his personality ever had, and worse, his face repelled them once they realized imperfections were real, not edited or softened by distance. The combination left him in a strange no-man's land where interest arrived too quickly and vanished even faster. He pushed himself up from the bed and walked to the kitchen, making coffee he barely tasted as he stared out over the city, its early morning skyline soft and blue. His assistant had already messaged asking for updates about the date because she was determined to monitor the progress of his personal life like a project that needed intervention. He ignored the message for now. He could not explain what last night had been because he was not entirely sure himself. He only knew that Harper had not flinched at his scar, had not tried to make him comfortable by pretending not to see it, and had not peppered him with questions to satisfy curiosity. She had simply asked if it still hurt, and then listened like the answer mattered. It unnerved him how rare that was. As he dressed for the morning meeting at the Thorne Foundation headquarters, he reflected on the long chain of disastrous dates that had shaped his skepticism. There was the woman who insisted they should merge finances on the second date, and the influencer who covertly live-streamed their dinner, whispering into her hidden mic while flashing him exaggerated smiles. There was also the one who had leaned close and murmured how much courage it must take for him to leave the house every day with such a face as if she were complimenting him on surviving his own existence. But the worst memory came from 3 years ago when a woman he genuinely liked called him an ATM, with legs during a phone conversation she assumed he could not overhear. After that, he had built walls so thick even he could barely see over them. When he stepped into the conference room, his team was already waiting, laptops open, documents ready, yet their greetings washed over him like faint ripples barely touching the edges of his thoughts. This had happened before on the rare occasions he met someone who stirred the smallest flicker of possibility inside him. But, normally, the flicker died by morning. This time, it had not. During the meeting, he tried to concentrate as they discussed the upcoming project in Louisiana, where his company would rebuild emergency structures damaged by recent storms. The plan mattered to him profoundly because he understood what it meant to create safety where destruction had left its mark. But today, even the passion he usually carried felt thin compared to the weight of Harper's honesty echoing in his mind. Hours later, when the meeting ended, his assistant Lena appeared in the doorway with a look he had come to recognize as pointed curiosity. "How did the date go? Should I plan for a second one?" She asked this with the enthusiasm of someone hoping to win a bet. Elias hesitated, then answered carefully. It was different. Lena blinked. Good different or bad different? Elias considered the question, then shook his head slightly. Honest different. That is all I can say. Lena's eyes widened as if that single word meant more than he realized. She smiled softly. That is the first time you have used that word since I have known you. Maybe this woman is normal. That would be refreshing. He almost said Harper was more than normal, but stopped himself because he still did not know what she was. All he knew was that she had listened to him without performance spoken, without calculation, and walked away without expectation. Those qualities felt alien in a world where everyone had an angle. He worked through the afternoon, but every few minutes he caught himself wondering what Harper might be doing. Was she at the hospital coaxing patients through difficult exercises, or at home helping Maddie with schoolwork? He imagined her sitting at the small kitchen table she had mentioned, sorting bills and planning shifts the way single mothers always seem to juggle life with equal measures of exhaustion and determination. As dusk approached, he found the courage he had not expected to find and typed a message, pausing before sending it. He chose something simple because he did not want to pressure her. Yet, he wanted her to know she had stayed on his mind. I hope your day was not as heavy as last night sounded. Thank you again for the honesty. He stared at the screen for several seconds before hitting send, then, almost immediately, regretted it. He feared sounding too eager, or too grateful, or too affected. He feared that she would misinterpret his interest as desperation. But when her reply came half an hour later, all his worries dissolved into something warm and quiet. You are welcome. And yes, today was heavy. But honest does not scare me. Most things do. That does not. Her message had no flirtation, no pretense, just truth offered in the same steady way she had spoken the night before. And without fully understanding why Elias found himself wanting to tell her more, he typed again before he could overthink. I hate dating. Harper responded almost instantly. That makes two of us. Why do you hate it? Elias considered how to summarize years of disappointment without sounding dramatic. Because most dates feel like interviews people come with expectations and answers rehearsed. Harper replied, I get that. People wear masks. He felt the words resonate with the ones she had spoken last night. People wear masks. I stopped wearing mine. Something inside him loosened a little as if he had been holding his breath for years. He sent one final message. I do not know what last night meant, but I know it was the first time in a long time something felt real. Her response was slower this time, as if she too weighed the truth behind each word. Real is rare. Do not question it too much. The simplicity of her message rooted itself in him like a promise he did not know he wanted. As night settled over the city, Elias stood by the window watching the lights flicker across the skyline, feeling more awake than he had in years. Dating still felt unbearable, but somehow the thought of seeing Harper again did not. The cold evening air wrapped around them the moment they stepped out of the restaurant, carrying with it the quiet hum of traffic and the distant glow of Manhattan lights reflecting off wet pavement. Harper pulled her jacket tighter around herself while Elias adjusted his pace to match hers without making it obvious. She had declined his offer to call a car, insisting she preferred to walk, and though he sensed it came from a place of independence rather than discomfort, he still felt a strange gratitude for being allowed to share even a few more blocks of her world. They moved down the sidewalk in a silence that was not awkward, just cautious, the kind two people carried when they were unsure if they were stepping toward something or running from it. Harper's footsteps were steady, but she kept her gaze slightly ahead, not wanting to risk meeting his eyes too often because every time she did something in his expression felt too honest, and she did not know if she was ready for that. Finally, she exhaled and spoke, her voice quiet but sure. "You did not have to walk with me." Elias shook his head. "I wanted to." Harper almost smiled. Wanting to is different from needing to show you are polite. Elias paused at the curb before they crossed. "I do not do things to appear polite. I do things because I mean them, or I do not do them at all." She nodded slowly, as if filing that truth away. They crossed the street and passed a small bookstore with its light still on the scent of roasted chestnuts drifting from a street cart nearby. Something about the ordinary warmth of the scene felt comforting after the emotional heaviness of their earlier conversation. Harper finally dared to glance at him. "You said last night that dating feels like an interview for you. Is tonight different?" Elias took a moment before answering, his breath forming pale clouds in the cold air. Different is too small a word. Harper tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear and looked ahead again as they passed a dim alleyway where a mural stretched across a brick wall, vivid blues and reds glowing beneath the streetlight. She slowed, not because of the mural, but because she had reached that familiar tug inside her that warned her whenever she was getting too close to someone. Maddie had once asked her why grown-ups were so scared of letting people in. Harper had answered truthfully, because letting people in gives them the power to leave, and Harper had lived enough abandonment to recognize that fear before it fully formed. After a few more steps, she spoke again. "Maddie's school sent another letter today. Tuition is going up again next semester." Elias turned slightly to look at her. "You are worried." She gave a short, humorless breath of a laugh. "Worried does not even cover it. It is constant. It never stops. I am always calculating hours, shifts, bills, and sometimes I feel like I am running out of ways to stretch a day." They walked past a bakery, locking its doors for the night, the warm smell lingering in the air. Elias felt something tighten in him, a mix of empathy and something more protective that he did not fully understand. He hesitated before speaking again. "Maddie is 6, right?" Harper nodded. "Smart, stubborn, full of questions. She has my eyes and her father's curiosity. He died when she was a baby, but she still asks about him sometimes." Her voice softened, then steadied. "I try my best, but sometimes I do not know if my best is enough." Elias slowed slightly, giving her space to breathe. "You are doing more than enough. I can see that even after only one night." Harper let out a breath she had been holding, surprised by how much those words meant coming from someone who barely knew her. But then again, maybe what mattered was not how long he had known her, but how sincerely he had been listening. A group of people walked past them, laughing loudly. A couple glanced at Elias's scar, then quickly averted their eyes. Harper saw the flicker of tension in his jaw, and without thinking, she moved a little closer to him, almost like a subtle shield. Elias noticed. "You do not have to do that." Harper frowned lightly. "Do what?" "Step closer when people look too long." She looked directly at him, her voice steady. "I did not even notice I did it. Maybe it is a habit from work. When patients feel stared at, you stand between them and the world for as long as they need." Elias absorbed that quietly feeling, something shift warm and fragile in his chest. They turned onto a quieter street, now lined with small apartment buildings and trees whose branches shook gently in the cold wind. Harper broke the silence first. "Why me?" She asked it softly, as if afraid the question might be misunderstood. "Why walk with me? Why be this open with me?" Elias stopped walking for a moment. Harper stopped too and faced him, their breaths mingling in the cold air. Elias looked at her not with intensity, but with quiet truth. "Because you looked at me like I was human. Everyone else looks at the scar first, the company, second the money, third. You looked at me. Just me." Harper felt something inside her chest crack open slightly, not in a painful way, but in the way a wound breaks before it begins to heal. She swallowed and forced herself to take a small step back because closeness was both comforting and frightening. "I appreciate your honesty, but I cannot get ahead of myself. I cannot let Maddie get attached to someone who might disappear." "Not again." Elias nodded without argument. "I am not asking for anything. I am just walking with you." Harper looked at him for a long moment, then exhaled. The corner of her mouth lifted into the smallest smile. "Walking is fine. For now." They resumed their pace, the city dimming around them as the night deepened. When they reached the intersection where their paths split, Harper turned to him once more. "You should head home. I have a couple more blocks." Elias nodded but did not move until she took the first step away. "Good night, Harper." She looked back just once. "Good night, Elias." And then she walked into the quiet of her neighborhood with a feeling she did not expect to carry home. Something like warmth. Something like the beginning of something real. Harper pushed open the creaky door to her apartment building, with her shoulder balancing the take-home leftovers the restaurant staff insisted she bring, and the weight of a night that felt strangely heavier and lighter at the same time. The hallway smelled faintly of old carpet and laundry detergent, familiar in the way that made her both grateful for stability and exhausted by its limits. When she reached her door, she could already hear Maddie humming softly on the other side, a tune she always sang when she was building something with her blocks. Harper unlocked the door and stepped inside. Maddie popped up from behind the tiny living room table with a grin that made her eyes shine. "Mommy, you're home. Did the man show up?" Harper froze only a split second before composing herself. "Yes, he showed up." Maddie's eyes grew wide as she hopped closer. "What did he look like? Did he have a nice smile? Was he tall?" Harper raised a brow and fought the tug of a smile threatening the corners of her mouth. "Where are you getting these questions?" Maddie shrugged. "Kids talk. Some of my classmates say their moms go on dates, and dates have rules. Rule 1 is the man should be tall." Harper laughed despite herself. "Who made that rule?" "A girl named Lauren. She said her mom said it." Harper knelt to help Maddie pick up the toys scattered around the floor. "Well, Lauren's mom has her own rules, and no, I do not think height is the most important thing." Maddie leaned closer, lowering her voice conspiratorially. "Did he have a scar?" Harper blinked. "How did you know about that?" Maddie shrugged again with the uncanny wisdom 6-year-olds sometimes carried. "You said he got hurt in a fire once, and you sounded sad like when you talk about Daddy." Harper's chest tightened softly. She nodded. "Yes, he has a scar. Does it look scary?" Harper thought of the way Elias had held himself stiffly when people stared, the quick flicker of pain he tried to hide. "Not scary," she answered. "Just real." Maddie accepted this easily, then lifted her arms. "Up, please." Harper scooped her into her arms, and Maddie rested her head against Harper's shoulder with a sigh. "You look happy, Mommy." Harper froze. "I do." Maddie nodded against her shoulder. "You look like when you watched the sunrise on the balcony, like something made you warm." Harper swallowed hard and held Maddie closer. "It is complicated, baby. Grown-up things usually are." Maddie pulled back and studied her face. "But you are smiling." Harper did not argue because arguing would be lying, and Harper had spent too much of her life telling herself half-truths in order to survive. She set Maddie down and helped her into pajamas while Maddie talked about school, about a drawing she made about a girl who refused to share crayons. When she finally settled Maddie into bed, the little girl looked up at her with sleepy eyes. "Will you see him again? Harper brushed a strand of hair from her daughter's forehead. Maybe? Maddie blinked with childlike certainty. I think you should. Harper kissed her forehead. Go to sleep, sweetheart. Once Maddie drifted off, Harper stepped quietly back into the living room. The apartment felt still. The city noise muffled by old windows, and for the first time in a long time, Harper let herself sit without rushing to the next task. She sat on the couch and let her shoulders drop, releasing a breath she did not know she had been holding. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, expecting a notification from the hospital or a reminder about bills. Instead, it was a message from Elias. She hesitated before opening it, steadying her breath. I hope your day was not as heavy as last night sounded. Thank you again for the honesty. Harper stared at the message for a long time, letting the words sink into her. There was no pressure in his tone, no expectation, no attempt to charm his way into her life. Just acknowledgement, respect, gratitude. She reread the message, feeling something quiet stir inside her, then typed slowly. You are welcome, and yes, today was heavy, but honest does not scare me. Most things do, that does not. She hit send before she could overthink it. The 3 blinking dots appeared almost immediately, and she felt a sudden rush of nerves she did not expect. Then his reply arrived. I hate dating. Harper blinked, then laughed softly at the bluntness of it. She typed back without pausing. That makes 2 of us. Why do you hate it? This time the dots took longer. Because most dates feel like interviews. People come with expectations and answers rehearsed. Harper thought about that the way he said it with a mixture of weariness and sincerity. I get that, she replied. People wear masks. The dots returned quickly. You said last night you stopped wearing yours. Harper leaned back into the couch, staring up at the ceiling. She typed slowly because she meant what she said. I stopped because masks got heavy, and they never protected me from the things I feared anyway. The phone was silent for a moment. Then his next message arrived. Real is rare. Do not question it too much. Something in her chest tightened. She let the silence linger between them before answering. I will not question it if you will not. She waited. A soft chime. Deal. She stared at the single word longer than she should have and finally placed the phone on her lap, letting the warmth of the moment settle into her bones. She felt the edges of a smile form, the kind that crept in without permission, the kind that had nothing to do with hope, but everything to do with recognition. Something had shifted tonight. Something she had not expected and was not sure she was ready for, but she could not deny the truth. She was smiling, and she had not done that for someone in a very long time. Elias stood outside the small cafe on West 82nd Street, feeling more out of place than he had in years, the soft glow of the hanging lights above the windows casting a warm yellow hue across the sidewalk. The cafe was tiny compared to the restaurants he usually attended, its brick walls slightly chipped, its chalkboard sign smudged by earlier drizzle, its door handle worn by countless hands. Yet something about it felt inviting, like a corner of the world where no one expected perfection. He took a steadying breath before pushing the door open. The warm air carried scents of cinnamon espresso and vanilla syrup blending into a comfort he had not realized he craved. People looked up at him as he entered, and he felt the familiar prickle of awareness, the silent shift when strangers noticed the scar along his face. Some stared a second too long before turning away. Others looked, then offered polite half-smiles more curious than cruel. He braced himself out of habit, shoulders, tightening jaw settling into the same reserved line he wore whenever he stepped into public spaces. And then Harper appeared from behind the counter. She wore a dark apron over a simple long-sleeve shirt, her hair tied up loosely, a few strands falling around her face. When she saw him, her expression shifted from mild surprise to something softer, something that eased the tension inside him more effectively than any polite gesture from strangers ever could. Her presence cut through the noise as if the room had dimmed around her. You came, she said quietly, walking toward him. I did. He tried not to sound nervous. I hope that is not a problem. Harper shook her head. Not a problem, just unexpected. She motioned toward an empty table near the window, a simple wooden corner that overlooked the street. Elias sat down while she resumed wiping the counter, though she glanced at him every so often as if making sure he had not changed his mind about being there. The cafe was busier than he anticipated. A trio of students typed noisily on laptops. Near the back, an older couple shared a slice of pie, and a man in paint-splattered jeans read a novel with headphones on. Ordinary people in an ordinary place. Elias watched them quietly and realized he envied them for the simplicity of their evening. Here, no one cared about shareholders or the price of steel contracts or leaked photos or corporate rivals waiting for weakness. Life here was small and real and safe in a way his world rarely allowed. Harper approached with 2 drinks. "I did not know what you like, so I brought both. Coffee and tea. Pick one or both or switch halfway if you feel rebellious." Elias huffed a soft laugh. "Thank you." He chose the coffee and she sat across from him with the tea, the steam rising between them in slow curls. He watched her blow gently across the surface of her drink before meeting his eyes. "So, what brings you here?" "Curiosity," he admitted, "and maybe wanting to see the world you mentioned." She raised a brow. "The world of minimum wage and aching feet." "Something like that," he said gently. Harper nodded with a faint smile, accepting the honesty instead of pushing it away. Maddie was with her neighbor for the evening, giving Harper breathing room before her hospital shift tomorrow. Elias glanced toward the door as it opened again, expecting another customer. Instead, a small voice called out, "Mom." Maddie ran inside, wearing her pink jacket slightly unzipped, cheeks flushed from cold air. Behind her was the neighbor, Mrs. Ortiz, giving a wave before stepping back outside. Maddie barreled toward Harper and hugged her tightly. "I finished my dinner, I promise." Harper laughed softly and stroked her daughter's hair. That was fast. Maddie nodded vigorously, then noticed Elias sitting at the table. Her eyes widened with shy excitement. "Hi again." Elias felt warmth spread through him at the easy sincerity in her greeting. "Hello, Maddie." She climbed onto the chair beside Harper with zero hesitation. "I made you something." She pulled out a crumpled sheet of paper from her jacket pocket, smoothing it across the table with serious concentration. The drawing showed a tall figure with a slightly crooked smile and a line drawn across one side of the face. Beside him was a smaller person with curls, and beneath them a large, uneven heart. "You look kind," she said matter-of-factly. "I drew that part first." Harper's breath caught, and she softly whispered, "Maddie." But Elias felt his throat tighten. Kind was not a word he heard often. People called him strong, intelligent, determined, resilient. Kind was new. He took the drawing with gentle fingers. "Thank you," he said quietly. Maddie beamed. "Did you like it?" "Very much." Harper gave Maddie a soft tap on the shoulder. "Honey, why do not you sit and draw another picture while I talk to Elias?" Maddie nodded cheerfully and climbed off the chair, choosing a small corner table with coloring books left by the cafe for kids. Elias watched her settle happily, then turned to Harper. "She is bright." Harper sighed. "She is everything. And she scares me sometimes because she is so much like her father, curious and kind and fierce, but I do not always know how to protect her from the world." Elias glanced around the cafe. "She seems safe here." "For now," Harper replied quietly, "but what about when the world gets louder?" Elias understood that fear more deeply than she realized. The world had been loud for him since the day of the explosion. Too loud, too harsh, too cruel. He looked at Harper and saw the same quiet fight in her that he carried in himself. "You protect her better than you think," he said gently. Harper pressed her lips together, absorbing the words with the same caution she used when letting someone close. People looked at him from time to time, their gaze lingering a second too long on his scar. Harper saw each glance and instinctively shifted slightly in her seat, as if her presence could create a small shield between him and the world. He noticed. "You do not have to do that," he said softly. Harper looked confused. "Do what?" "Step in when people stare." She blinked. "I did not notice. I suppose it is a nurse thing. Protecting people is muscle memory at this point." She looked away for a moment before returning her gaze to his face. Besides, I do not like when people assume scars tell the whole story. Elias exhaled the tension, leaving his body inch by inch. They talked for another hour about her shifts at the hospital, about his work rebuilding structures destroyed by storms, about the difference between surviving and living. Nothing felt forced. Nothing felt rehearsed. When Harper finally walked him to the door, she paused before speaking. "I did not expect you to come here," she said softly. "I did not expect you to want me to," he answered. She held his gaze, her voice low. "I feel safer here, in my world." He nodded. "I feel safer here too." Harper blinked, surprised by the sincerity in his tone. Then she opened the door for him, letting the cold air rush inside. "Good night, Elias." "Good night, Harper." And as he stepped into the street with Maddie's drawing tucked carefully inside his coat, he realized he had found something he never expected to find. A place where he was not the billionaire, or the survivor, or the man with the scar. A place where he was simply a person. Harper led the way down the narrow street toward her apartment building, the buzzing neon sign of the laundromat flickering behind them as they walked, casting shifting blue light over the sidewalk. Elias followed half a step behind. Not because he was afraid to walk beside her, but because he sensed instinctively that Harper needed a little space while she sorted through whatever thoughts were unfolding in her mind. The neighborhood was quieter than the parts of Manhattan he usually inhabited, the hum of traffic more distant, the sounds of ordinary life pulsing softly through the walls of the aging buildings. A dog barked from a balcony overhead, a couple argued in low voices near a stairwell. A toddler somewhere inside the building squealed with laughter. Everything felt lived in imperfect real. Harper stopped beside the rusted railing of her building's front steps and glanced back at him. Her expression conflicted, as if she was deciding whether to let him see beyond this point of her world. "You do not have to walk me all the way in," she said, her voice gentle but guarded. Elias nodded. "I know, but I wanted to walk you this far." Harper gave a small exhale, neither annoyed nor relieved, simply thoughtful. She sat on the bottom step and motioned for him to sit if he wanted. Elias lowered himself beside her, feeling the cold metal of the railing press lightly against his back. The street lamp above them buzzed softly. Harper's breath clouded the air. For a moment, neither spoke. Then, Harper's fingers curled into the edge of her jacket as she said quietly, "I did not grow up with much. My mom worked double shifts. I learned early how to heat ramen without burning it, and I learned even earlier that sometimes people leave even when they say they will not." Elias listened, watching her face illuminated by the street lamp's muted glow. She looked tired but strong, her voice steady even when the words trembled with memory. When Maddie's father got sick with worry about work and everything else he changed, she continued. Not in an evil way, just tired. Tired enough to make bad decisions, a lot of debt, a lot of fear. By the time Maddie was born, we were drowning, and then he died. Her voice caught just slightly, but she pressed on. I have been running ever since. Running from bills. Running from memories. Running from letting anyone in, because if they leave, I am the one Maddie will look at with questions. Elias wanted to offer comfort, but he sensed she was not finished. She shifted on the step, pulling her knees closer. And every time someone offers help, I panic because I do not know if it is real or if it is something I will end up paying for later. Elias stared at the pavement for a long second before speaking. I understand that more than you know. Harper glanced at him. Do you? Elias nodded slowly. People look at me and think money solves everything, but money cannot make someone stay because they care. It can buy attention, sure, but not sincerity. It can buy company, but not connection. And it definitely cannot erase the moments when you realize someone liked an idea of you instead of the person sitting right in front of them. Harper softened at that. The moment she first saw him in the cafe flashed in her mind the instant their eyes met, and she noticed the man before the scar. She inhaled. Does it get lonely? Elias considered the question, surprised by its directness, yet grateful for it. Yes, he said honestly. Most days it is just noise around me. Not actual closeness. Not trust. just noise. She looked down at her hands. That is why tonight scares me. Elias turned slightly toward her. Why? Because I felt something, she whispered. And I do not like when feelings sneak up on me without warning. I have worked too hard to keep my world stable for Maddie. If I let you into that world, and something goes wrong, she is the one who breaks, not me. Elias felt the weight of her words land in his chest. He admired her honesty, even though it carved a quiet ache inside him. I do not want to cause trouble for you or Maddie, he said. Harper shook her head quickly. You are not trouble. That is the part that scares me. You make things feel easier, safe even, and I do not trust easy things. Nothing in my life has ever been easy. Elias looked at her with a calm sincerity that made the cold air feel suddenly warmer. I am not trying to make anything easy, or fast, or anything you are not ready for. I am just trying to be here. That is all. Harper pressed her lips together, the corner of her mouth trembling as if she were fighting the urge to believe him. Then she added softly, And what about you? What scares you? Elias hesitated only for a breath. People stay as long as I am useful, he said. As long as I can solve a problem or wear the mask they expect. I am scared of someone seeing beyond all that and deciding I am not enough. Harper looked at him fully then, and the world around them seemed to fade slightly into the background. You are enough, she whispered. Her voice was soft, but certain. Elias swallowed hard, his gaze fixed on hers. He felt seen in a way that reached far deeper than the surface. The intimacy of the moment was emotional, not physical. A stillness charged with understanding and unspoken truth. Harper looked away abruptly, breaking the tension before it overwhelmed her. I cannot let Maddie get attached, she said again, firmer this time. Not yet. Elias nodded. I understand, and I am not going anywhere. Harper blinked, startled. Why? Elias allowed a faint smile, the kind that held more sincerity than charm. Because real is rare, and you make things feel real. Harper exhaled shakily, gathering her courage before standing. I should get inside. Long day tomorrow. Elias rose with her. I know. Good night, Harper. She paused at the door, fingers wrapped around the handle. Good night, Elias. Then she stepped inside, closing the door softly behind her. Elias remained on the step for several seconds, letting the quiet night settle around him with the faint, lingering warmth of her presence beside him. In her world, he was not the billionaire, or the scar, or the name printed on magazines. He was just a man. And, for the first time in years, being just a man felt like enough. Harper woke the next morning with a knot of unease sitting low in her chest, the kind that whispered something was coming even before anything had happened. She tried to shake it off as she packed Maddie's lunch, tied her daughter's shoes, and rushed out the door for her morning shift at the rehabilitation clinic. But the feeling clung to her like static. At noon, while she was charting patient progress notes, her phone began vibrating nonstop inside her scrub pocket. At first, she ignored it, but when it kept buzzing rapid and insistent, she finally stepped into the hallway and checked the screen. Dozens of notifications flooded her feed. Tags, mentions, messages from acquaintances she had not spoken to in years. Confusion hit first, then dread. Harper tapped one of the links, and in an instant, the world tilted. A viral post on a gossip forum had exploded overnight. Someone had uploaded a grainy photo taken secretly at Glass Harbor the night of her date with Elias, and above it, a caption written with poisonous carelessness. Billionaire with a burned face dating single mom for PR stunt. Harper stared, her breath stalling in her chest. Beneath that line were hundreds of comments that grew crueler as she scrolled. Opportunistic single mom strikes again. Of course he needs good publicity. Who would date him willingly? The worst ones were memes mocking Elias's scar. Edited pictures, jokes about fire. A few comments even speculated she had staged everything for attention. But the one thing that froze her completely was the identity of the poster, a username she recognized. One of the women who had once tried to cozy up to Elias, a gold digger known for chasing wealthy men and bragging about it online. Someone he had rejected. Someone with motive. Harper's hands shook as she locked her phone. She felt sick. The hallway suddenly too bright, too narrow. She needed air. She stepped outside into the hospital courtyard, drawing a shaky breath. Her phone buzzed again. A message from her supervisor. "Please see me in my office. Now." Harper wiped her palms on her scrubs and walked back inside, heart hammering. Her supervisor, Dr. Lane, closed the office door behind her with a sigh. "Harper, I received several calls from the board this morning. It seems your name is circulating." Harper braced herself. "This has nothing to do with my work." Dr. Lane nodded sympathetically. "I believe you, truly. But the hospital cannot risk media attention tied to patient care, especially with how fast this is spreading. We are giving you a written warning. Further escalation may require suspension until things cool down." The words struck like a blow, a warning, because of a lie she did not ask for. Harper nodded stiffly, throat burning, as she left the office. She made it to the break room before her composure cracked, her breath shaking as she pressed her hands to her face. She hated this world. The way it punished people simply for being near wealth, as if proximity alone painted her guilty. Her phone buzzed again. For a moment she could not bring herself to look, but when she finally did, she saw the message was from Elias. "Call me when you can. I think something is happening online." Harper stared at his message, her chest twisting. Hideous. He must have seen the comments, the jokes about his scars, the mockery of his face. Rage and heartbreak flared together. She knew how deeply those scars ran beneath the skin. She dialed him immediately. He picked up before the first ring completed. "Harper." His voice was low-controlled, but she heard the strain underneath. "Are you okay?" "No," she whispered honestly. "Are you?" Silence stretched over the line before he answered. "I have been through worse." That was all he said, but Harper felt the weight behind the words. The world had already hurt him once with fire. Now it was burning him again with cruelty. Harper found herself leaning against the break room counter as if her knees might give out. "Elias, I am so sorry. You did nothing wrong." "Neither did you," he said quietly, and his voice tightened. "I am the one they are targeting. You should not be paying for that." Harper blinked back tears. "It is not your fault. None of this is your fault." But their worlds were colliding, crashing into each other in ways she had feared all along. Harper glanced at the clock. Her next patient would arrive in minutes, but she could not breathe past the ache in her chest. "People are calling me an opportunistic single mom," she said, voice trembling. "They think I am using you. And Maddie. God, I cannot let this spill into her life." Elias inhaled sharply. "Harper, I will fix this." She flinched. "No, that is exactly what I cannot have. You swooping in makes it look worse. It proves them right even when they are not." A harsh silence filled the line. Harper continued before he could speak. "Our worlds are too different, Elias. You have the whole internet watching you. Maddie is only 6. She cannot survive this." The truth of her fear cracked open as she said it out loud. She heard Elias breathe out slowly, like someone absorbing a punch. "Harper, please do not pull away because of something someone else did." But she could hear how tired he sounded, how hurt, how familiar this pain must have been for him. "You do not understand," she whispered. "Every time I have let someone get close to Maddie, they left, or something broke. This is not just about me, it is her life too." The line went silent again, not angry, just devastated. Harper closed her eyes. "I cannot let her be torn apart by strangers who do not even know her name." "Or yours." A faint rustle came through the phone as if Elias had turned away, maybe gripping the bridge of his nose the way he did when overwhelmed. "I get it," he finally said quietly. His voice was rougher now. "I hate that I do, but I do." Harper pressed a hand over her trembling mouth. "I am sorry, Elias. I am so sorry." "I know you are," he said, "and that makes this worse." They stayed on the line in a shared silence, heavy with everything they could not say. Finally, Harper whispered, "I need time. Just a little." Elias's voice came back barely above a breath. "Take it. I will not push you. but the pain in his words was unmistakable. Harper hung up because if she kept listening, she might break entirely. She steadied herself against the counter, breathing in and out until her heart slowed. The internet had found its next target, and it had chosen both of them. She curled her fingers into a fist, blinking back the wetness in her eyes. For the first time, Harper understood just how much the world loved to hurt people like Elias, and now it was hurting her too. The afternoon sun slanted across the playground as Harper hurried toward the fenced area behind Maddie's school, her pulse still uneasy from the chaos of the day. She had left work early after finishing her remaining rounds, forcing her breath to steady as she reminded herself that Maddie always grounded her. Seeing her daughter would help the world feel less vicious for at least a moment. But the moment she stepped through the gate, she heard crying. Sharp, panicked. Maddie's crying. Harper's heart lurched violently as she rushed toward the sound. Maddie sat in the mulch near the slide, clutching her scraped arm, blood smeared across her tiny elbow. A teacher knelt beside her trying to calm her, but Maddie's sobs came in gasping bursts. "Mommy, Mommy, it hurts, it hurts." Harper sank to her knees, instantly pulling Maddie into her arms. "Oh, sweetheart, what happened?" Maddie hiccuped. "I fell. A boy bumped me. It stings." Harper saw the scrape and felt a wave of guilt crash over her. She should have been more present today, less shaken, less distracted by the storm brewing online. She barely heard the teacher explaining how Maddie had taken a harder fall because she tripped running down the small hill. Harper whispered soft, soothing words, brushing Maddie's hair until the sobs softened. Then another voice cut through the noise. Harper. Harper froze, because she knew that voice. She looked up. Elias stood just outside the playground gate, breathing slightly fast like he had run to get there. His hair was wind-tousled, his coat unbuttoned, his eyes locked directly on Maddie with a concern so raw it startled Harper. "How did you know?" Harper asked breathlessly. "You did not answer my texts," he said quietly. "I got worried. I checked the school line. They said Maddie had taken a fall." Harper blinked. He had called the school. In any other scenario, she might have felt overwhelmed or defensive. But one look at him erased all of that. He had panicked. For Maddie, not because of optics or image or needing to appear caring. This was instinct. Real. He stepped toward them. "May I help?" Harper hesitated, but Maddie, whimpering, made the decision for her. She nodded. Elias crouched beside them, rolling up his sleeves, revealing forearms marked faintly with old burn textures barely visible unless one looked closely. His movements were calm, practiced, steady. "Do you mind if I take a look?" he asked gently. Maddie sniffed and nodded, trusting him instantly the way children sense sincerity without needing proof. Elias examined the scrape with precise care, checking the length, depth, and any debris lodged in the wound. He spoke softly as he worked, explaining everything in simple terms. "You are very brave, Maddie, and this scrape looks worse than it is. It is going to sting for a minute, but I promise you will be okay." Maddie's breathing steadied at the sound of his voice. Harper watched, silently mesmerized by how gentle he was, how attuned, how patient. He cleaned the wound using the small first aid kit he always carried, a habit he explained once because fire teaches you never to be unprepared. He avoided making Maddie flinch, distracting her with quiet reassurances. When he placed the bandage, he pressed it lightly, smoothing the edges so it would not peel. There, he murmured, "All done." Maddie blinked at her newly covered elbow, then surprised everyone by reaching out and hugging him tightly. "Thank you. You made it not scary." Elias froze for half a breath as if unsure whether he was allowed to receive the affection, then slowly hugged her back, carefully, mindful of her arm. "I am really glad," he whispered. Harper felt something tighten inside her chest, something almost painful with how deeply it landed. When Maddie let go, Harper found her voice. "Thank you." She whispered it, but the gratitude in her tone was fuller than she expected. Elias straightened, brushing playground mulch from his knees. "I had to come." Harper exhaled shakily. "You did not have to. Not really." He looked at her, and the vulnerability in his expression caught her completely off guard. "But I wanted to." Harper swallowed every instinct telling her to keep distance. She looked down at Maddie, who was now wiping her eyes, looking between them. "Mommy, is he staying for dinner?" Harper blinked. "Sweetheart, he might have plans." Elias shook his head. "I do not." Maddie smiled wide and took his hand with a familiarity that would have terrified Harper a day ago. But at that moment, it just felt right. Harper said softly, "We should get back home." Elias nodded. "I will walk with you." The walk was quiet but not tense. The kind of quiet filled with unspoken reflection. Harper kept glancing at Elias, noting how he walked slightly behind Maddie, letting her lead, her little hand swinging comfortably in his. When they reached the apartment lobby, Maddie ran ahead to the elevator, leaving Harper and Elias by the entrance. "You did not have to run here," she said again, voice gentler, more open. His eyes met hers. "You were upset this morning, and when I heard Maddie was hurt, I needed to be here." Harper's chest tightened. "You were calm. So calm. Most people panic." Elias looked away for a moment. "When you have survived what I survived, it changes how you respond to fear." Harper inhaled. "Elias," she began, voice trembling slightly. "The things online. They were cruel. About you, about me, about your scars." He nodded once, jaw tightening. "It is not new, but it still hurts." Harper stepped closer, lowering her voice. "When I saw the post, I was furious. Not embarrassed, not ashamed, angry, because you did not deserve that, and because Maddie. She should not see the world treat someone kind like that." Elias looked almost startled by her words, his expression softening. "Harper, I know you said our worlds are too different, but moments like today remind me that maybe difference does not have to mean impossible." Harper wanted to believe that. She wanted to lean into the warmth he offered, but fear still lingered. Still, she whispered one truth she could not hide. "When you helped her, I saw who you are. Not the billionaire. Not the man with a public image. Just you." Elias's breath caught subtly. And was that enough? Harper looked him in the eyes. It was more than enough. Maddie yelled from the elevator, "Come on, slowpokes!" Elias let out a startled laugh, the first real one of the day. Harper felt something ease inside her. Something small but powerful. Something real. And for the first time since the internet decided to tear their lives open, she felt a spark of hope flicker. Maybe real care meant not running from the storm. Maybe it meant choosing who you wanted beside you when it hit. The air outside the apartment felt different that night, quieter in a way that made Harper second-guess whether she should have agreed to what Elias asked. But she found herself walking beside him anyway, her steps matching his in a rhythm both careful and drawn by something neither wanted to name yet. Maddie had fallen asleep on the couch after dinner, her small body curled around her stuffed fox, leaving Harper and Elias in that suspended moment between goodbye and something deeper. When Elias asked softly if she could step out for a walk, Harper hesitated only a breath before grabbing her coat. Now they walked in silence through the dimly lit street, passing the worn brick buildings, and the glow of storefronts closing for the night. Harper finally spoke. "You said you wanted to show me something." Elias nodded, his gaze fixed ahead. "Yes, but only if you want to see it." Harper swallowed. "If it is part of you, then I want to know." He glanced at her, then eyes softened by something like relief before turning into a quieter side street. They walked several blocks until the buildings thinned and a modern glass structure appeared between older warehouses. The sign out front read, "Thorne Research Initiative Rehabilitation Annex." Harper stopped. This is yours." Elias exhaled, hands sliding into his pockets as if bracing himself. "It is where everything changed." He tapped a keycard and led her through a side entrance. The building was mostly dark at this hour, lights dimmed to a soft blue glow along the hallways. Harper followed him into a small corridor with a thick metal door at the end. Her breath slowed, something about the air feeling heavier here. Elias paused in front of the door. "I have never brought anyone here, not even business partners." Harper felt his vulnerability like a palpable shift in the room, and her voice softened. "You do not have to show me if it hurts." Elias shook his head. "It hurts more not to." He pushed the door open. Inside was a small room with fire-resistant panels and reinforced steel walls. There were remnants of scorch marks, faded but still visible, a dark reminder of something violent and life-altering. Harper took a step inside and felt the temperature drop a little. "Is this?" Elias nodded once. This was the lab, the one that exploded. Harper's breath caught. She had heard the story in vague pieces from articles, but none of them ever showed the reality. She looked around at the cold metal walls, at the faint outlines left by flames long extinguished. "What happened?" she whispered. Elias stood near the center of the room, his shadow stretching against the steel floor. "I was 24, too ambitious, too arrogant, maybe. We were developing a micro-fuel cell, a clean energy prototype. My best friend James was testing with me. The night it happened, he was the one calibrating the system." Harper could hear the tremor in his voice, though he tried to steady it. "I noticed a pressure shift in one of the chambers. I told him to step back. He laughed, said I was being paranoid. Then the meter spiked. The world just turned to fire." Harper felt her stomach twist. "I remember the sound," he continued, eyes staring at a point on the far wall as if seeing the moment replay. It was not like in movies. It was a crack, more than a boom. A tearing sound. And then heat everywhere. Harper stepped closer, but not too close, letting him have space. "I tried to pull him out," Elias said, his voice quieter now. "I grabbed his arm. I dragged him until something collapsed. A beam, maybe. I do not know. It hit my side. I could not move. The fire rolled over us. Harper covered her mouth, just barely stopping a gasp. Elias swallowed hard. They told me later that I had dragged him far enough that they could reach him. But James, he inhaled too much smoke before they got there. He did not make it." Harper felt tears sting her eyes at the rawness in his voice. Elias lifted a hand subconsciously, brushing the fingers along the faint raised line near his jaw. "I got the scars. He got the blame lifted from me. His family never forgave me. They said I should have saved him, or that I should have died too." Harper stepped closer until she was standing beside him. Elias's breath hitched almost imperceptibly. "I lived," he whispered, "and for years I thought maybe I was not meant to." Harper reached out slowly, gently, placing her hand near his, not touching yet, waiting for him to decide. Elias turned toward her fully for the first time since they entered the room, something raw trembling in his eyes. Harper whispered, "Elias, look at me." He did, and she finally said the truth she had been holding since the first night they met. "Your scars do not tell the story of who you failed to save. They tell the story of who you tried to save." Elias's breath left him in a shaky exhale, and Harper finally closed the distance, letting her fingers rest lightly against his jaw, tracing the ridges of the scar with the soft reverence of someone recognizing pain, not judging it. Elias closed his eyes at the contact, as if the touch reached something deeper than skin. Harper's voice softened. "You did not leave him. You stayed until the fire took everything. That is not failure. That is love." Elias opened his eyes again, and they were glassy with emotions he had never let surface around anyone. "I have carried this for 11 years, he said quietly, alone." Harper shook her head, her thumb brushing lightly against the edge of his scar. "You are not alone anymore. Not with this. Not with any of it." The words settled between them in a fragile, aching stillness. Elias's voice broke just slightly as he said, "I did not think anyone could see me without seeing the scars first." Harper looked at him fully, her voice steady. "I saw them. I just did not stop there." Elias inhaled deeply, almost gratefully, the tightness in his shoulders easing as if the room itself finally loosened its grip on him. Harper stepped closer until the warmth between their bodies chased the cold metal air away. For the first time since the fire, Elias Thorne allowed someone into the place built from his deepest pain. Not as a billionaire, not as a symbol, not as a man scarred by tragedy, but simply as himself. And for the first time, Harper let herself want something more than protection or survival. She wanted him. Not the version the world mocked or whispered about. The man standing in front of her who carried his grief like a second skin and still found gentleness left inside him. Neither of them moved to close the space further or to rush the moment. They simply stood together in the quiet room where his life had broken and slowly began to rebuild itself in the presence of someone who finally saw him without fear, without pity, and without conditions. The next morning began quietly deceptively, so the kind of quiet that settles right before something shifts. Harper woke early, packing Maddie's lunch and brushing her daughter's hair while Maddie swung her legs sleepily at the kitchen table. There was a faint warmth still lingering in Harper's chest from the night before the memory of standing with Elias in that room, the truth laid bare between them. It had been heavy, yes, but it had also been the first time in years she had felt understood without having to translate her pain. She tried not to smile at the memory, but failed. Maddie noticed immediately. "Mommy looks happy today." Harper kissed the top of her head. "Maybe I am a little." Maddie grinned. "Is Elias coming for pancakes again?" Harper paused mid-step. "He never came for pancakes." Maddie shrugged. "He feels like someone who likes pancakes." Harper shook her head with a laugh she tried to suppress. "Focus, sweetheart. Finish your juice." They left the apartment moments later. The morning felt crisp, the kind of cold that wakes the senses, and Harper walked Maddie to school before heading toward her second job. She needed the extra hours, in case her hospital situation worsened. But despite the worry, she carried the warmth of last night like a quiet secret. Then, around 9, her phone buzzed. A message from the school. "Maddie is safe. She is in the office. She wants to talk to you." Harper's heart seized. She rushed outside to call immediately. Maddie answered in a whisper. "Mommy, Elias came to say hi before class." Harper blinked. "He did." "Yeah. I told him something and now he looks sad." Harper felt herself freeze. "Sweetheart, what did you say?" Maddie's small voice wavered. "I just told him what you said last night." Harper's breath stopped. "What did I say?" Maddie hesitated. "You said you do not know if you can trust rich people." Harper's chest collapsed inward. Oh, God. She had said that. Not about Elias, but about her past, about the scars her late husband left behind, about debts and fear and instability. But she had never meant it about Elias. Elias must have thought. She squeezed her eyes shut. "Sweetheart. Thank you for telling me. You did nothing wrong. I will talk to him." Maddie sniffed. He did not smile when he left. Harper's heart ached. "I know, baby. I will fix it." She hung up and immediately called Elias. The phone rang, and rang, and rang. No answer. Panic prickled her spine. She texted him. "Elias, please call me. It is not what you think." Another message. "Please." Silence. By noon, a new problem arrived. Dr. Lane called her into the hospital office again. Harper walked in stomach already twisting. Dr. Lane's expression told her everything. "Harper, the board met this morning. The situation with the viral post has escalated. Several donors complained. We cannot afford the visibility." Harper's throat tightened. "No, please, I have been here 4 years. You know my work." Dr. Lane looked devastated. "I tried. I truly did. But the decision is made. Effective today, your employment is suspended pending review." The words crashed hard, knocking the air from her lungs. Suspended. Suspended meant income gone, health care gone, stability gone. And all because of a lie she did not create a world she did not choose to step into. Harper felt tears burning. "I did nothing wrong." "I know," Dr. Lane whispered. "I am so sorry, Harper. Please gather your things." Harper left the office in a daze, moving like someone underwater. Her scrubs suddenly felt too tight, too suffocating as she walked down the hallway. She reached the locker room, opened her locker, stared at the contents, and felt her entire world tilt. She had worked her way out of debt, out of panic, out of being dismissed and forgotten. And now, a rumor tied to a man she barely allowed herself to want was taking everything from her. Her phone buzzed, a notification, a trending tweet. An internal company whistleblower account claiming an unnamed billionaire was manipulating a single mom for PR correction. The thread hinted at Elias, and hinted at her. Harper slammed the locker shut. She needed air. But the moment she stepped outside the hospital doors, someone was waiting. A man in a pressed suit leaning against a black sedan. She recognized him instantly. Travis Beckett, one of the senior directors at Thorne Industries. A man who had once tried to undermine Elias during a project meeting Harper overheard accidentally in the cafe next to her shift. A man whose ego bruised easily. He pushed off the car with a smug smile. "You must be Harper Cole." She stiffened. "What do you want?" Travis straightened his tie, pretending politeness. "I wanted to offer you some advice. You might want to distance yourself from Elias. The media heat is getting worse, and some of us believe he is unstable." Harper's stomach twisted with disgust. She stepped closer, anger sharpening her voice. "You spread the rumor." Travis smirked like he enjoyed the recognition. "People talk. I amplify. It is nothing personal." Harper's fists curled. "It is very personal." Travis shrugged. "My only suggestion is to walk away before your life is dragged down any further. You cannot protect your daughter from this." He got back in the car, the window rolling up as he gave her one final triumphant look before driving off. Harper stood frozen breaths coming fast. Everything was spiraling. Her job gone. Her reputation cracking. The wrong people mocking Elias's scars. And now, the man most determined to destroy Elias professionally had used her to strike him personally. She pressed both palms to her forehead, trying to steady herself, whispering, "Please, no, no, no," under her breath. When she finally pulled her hands down, her phone vibrated again. A text from Elias. 3 words. "I need space." Harper's breath hitched like someone had punched her. She typed back immediately. "Elias, please." It was a misunderstanding. "Maddie repeated something I said years ago. Not now. Please believe me." The bubbles appeared, then disappeared, appeared again, then vanished completely. Harper sank onto the cold concrete steps outside the hospital, her vision blurring. She felt everything slipping through her fingers at once. Her job, her safety, her connection with Elias, her ability to shield Maddie. And none of it had come from malice. Not from her, not from Elias, just from a world determined to weaponize their pain. Harper's whisper cracked into the empty air. "Being with you cost me my job." She hated the words even as she said them because they were not fair, not true in the way they sounded. But in that moment, grief clouded everything. A few people passing by glanced at her, but no one stopped. Harper pressed a hand over her shaking mouth. Elias, somewhere alone, believed she did not trust him, and she believed she had just lost everything. The misunderstanding was perfect, and perfectly heartbreaking. Harper stood outside her apartment building, breathing in the cold air that stung her lungs, trying to keep herself from unraveling completely. The city moved around her in its usual rhythm, but everything inside her felt suspended, brittle, seconds away from shattering. She knew she could not let things end in misunderstanding. Not with everything they had already survived. Not with the truth still unsaid between them. She squared her shoulders, wiped her face, and called an Uber before she could second-guess herself. By the time she reached Elias's building, her nerves pulsed like electricity, her hands shaking as she stepped through the glass doors. The lobby attendant recognized her from earlier visits and simply nodded her through without question. It felt strange to walk into a world she feared she was losing. When the elevator opened onto Elias's private floor, Harper stepped out slowly, her breath catching at the sight of him standing at the far end of the hallway. He looked like he had been waiting, pacing, maybe shoulders tight, hair slightly mussed as if he had been running a hand through it over and over. When he turned, his eyes locked onto hers, and the hurt there almost made her turn back. But she didn't. She walked toward him. He exhaled, long and shaky. "Harper." His voice was quiet, guarded. She swallowed, stopping just a few feet from him. "We need to talk." He nodded once, stepping aside so she could enter his penthouse. The place felt colder than usual, not in temperature but in atmosphere, as if the misunderstanding between them filled the space like a draft. Harper stood in the living room while Elias lingered near the window's arms, crossed tightly across his chest. After a long silence, he finally spoke. "Maddie told me what you said. She told me you did not know if you could trust rich people." His voice cracked just slightly. I thought you meant me." Harper felt the ache twist deeper. "I did say those words, but not about you." Her voice trembled as she continued. "When my husband died, he left behind debts and lies and fear. I spent years trying to untangle my life from the shadow of one man's mistakes. I told myself, never again. Never trust anybody whose world can swallow yours. Never let a man with money dictate your survival." Elias's jaw tightened. "And that is what you think I am capable of?" Harper stepped forward. "No, not anymore, but back then I thought it about everyone with money. Not you." Elias looked down at his hands. "But Maddie said it, and kids do not usually mix up small details like that." Harper inhaled sharply. "Because 2 nights ago I talked about my past, about my fear, and she overheard. She was not talking about now. She was talking about years ago." Elias stayed silent. Harper closed her eyes briefly before forcing herself to speak the words she had been avoiding. "I am sorry you thought I doubted you. I should have told you that my fear was about losing myself again, not about you hurting me." Elias's voice came out low. "But you pulled away. You told me you needed time." Harper shook her head fiercely. "I needed time because I was drowning, not because I did not trust you. My job was slipping, the internet was after us, and Maddie—" She fought tears. "I was terrified, not of you, of losing everything again." Elias swallowed hard, turning toward her fully now. "Harper." But she raised a hand, steadying her breath as she forced herself to tell the truth she had buried beneath fear. "I came to tell you one more thing, something I should have said the moment everything began falling apart." Elias waited. Harper whispered, "I never blamed you. For the rumors, for the gossip, even for showing up in my life in a way I did not expect. You did not cost me my job. Travis did. The internet did. A system that does not protect people like me did." Elias's eyes flickered with pain, but also something softer, something that recognized her honesty as the olive branch it was. Harper continued, her voice trembling. "When I said being with you cost me my job, I was hurting. I was scared. And I said something that was not fair." Elias's breath hitched. "I never wanted to make your life harder." Harper shook her head. "You did not. You made things better. That is why it scared me so much." Elias stared at her for a long beat. Then, softly, almost reluctantly, he said, "There is something I need to tell you too." Harper tensed. Elias took a breath like he was preparing for impact. "I paid Maddie's school tuition." Harper felt her heart stop. The world narrowed to that one sentence. "You." "What?" Her voice was barely a whisper. Elias stepped closer, his expression raw, pleading. "I know it sounds bad. I know you will think I overstepped, but listen to me before you decide anything." Harper felt her pulse throbbing in her ears, but she nodded. Elias continued, his voice steady, even as his eyes glistened. "The day Maddie fell in the playground, she told me her school might not let her into the enrichment program next year because funding for her spot was uncertain. And I remembered what it felt like to lose opportunities because someone decided you were not worth the investment. I could not stand the thought of her being punished for something out of her control, or yours." Harper blinked back tears as he went on. "I was going to tell you, that night. But then the rumors hit, and you were overwhelmed, and I did not want you thinking I was trying to buy your trust, or your affection." Harper took a shaky breath. "Why did you do it?" Elias's voice dropped to something painfully honest. "Because Maddie deserves a future that is more stable than the one you were forced to build alone. And you deserve someone who stands beside you, not above you." Harper's throat tightened. She whispered, "Elias, I am not angry because you helped. I am scared because no one has ever helped me without expecting something in return." Elias shook his head firmly. "I expect nothing. I just wanted her to have a chance." Harper felt the walls around her heart tremble not from fear, but from finally being understood. Tears filled her eyes as she stepped closer. "I am sorry I doubted myself. And us. And you." Elias matched her step, his own voice breaking. "And I am sorry I pulled away before asking for the truth." They stood inches apart, exhaustion and vulnerability woven between them. Harper finally exhaled the words she had been holding tight for weeks. "I do not want distance, I just want honesty. Yours and mine." Elias's gaze softened completely. "Then, honesty is all you will get from me." She reached for his hand slowly as if deciding whether she was allowed. He met her halfway, fingers intertwined. Not lovers, not yet, but no longer running, no longer afraid of the truth that bound them. They stood in the quiet penthouse, letting the world fall away as they chose something simple and profoundly rare: trust. 1 year later, the morning sun washed softly through the wide glass windows of the new rehabilitation center, illuminating the name etched across the wall in clean, understated letters: the Maddie Cole Burn Recovery and Resilience Center. Harper stood at the entrance, smoothing the collar of her blazer with a mixture of nerves and disbelief, watching families file in for the grand opening. It felt surreal standing here, not as an employee scrambling between shifts, not as a woman barely surviving each paycheck, but as the director of a place built from pain, rebuilt in truth, and funded quietly and respectfully by the man who had never once asked for recognition. Behind her, Maddie darted across the lobby in a bright yellow dress, her braids bouncing as she clutched a stack of handmade flyers she insisted on giving to everyone who walked in. "The center helps people be brave," she announced proudly, handing one to a woman who smiled warmly back. "And Mommy says bravery can be learned if someone believes in you." Harper felt her heart swell as she watched her daughter speaking with confidence she had never imagined Maddie could carry 1 year ago when life felt like a fragile balancing act that might crumble with one wrong step. Now, Maddie ran with ease, laughter echoing through the hallways, the first child's voice to christen a place meant for healing. Harper looked around, taking in the warm wooden panels, the soft lighting, the therapy rooms filled with art supplies and sensory materials, spaces created with tenderness rather than sterile detachment. Everything about this place had intention behind it, the intention to rebuild lives without shame, without fear, and without the loneliness both she and Elias once knew too well. Speaking of which, she felt him before she saw him. Elias stepped into the lobby from the side entrance, adjusting the cuff of his shirt, his suit, charcoal gray, elegant but understated. The faint scar along his jaw caught the morning light, softened now by time and by the acceptance he had learned to give himself. He scanned the room until his eyes found hers, and Harper felt that same quiet spark flicker inside her, the one from their first night at Glass Harbor, the one that had surprised her by its honesty and its depth. He walked toward her, each step steady, familiar. "You look nervous," he teased gently. Harper exhaled with a tiny laugh. "I look like someone who cannot believe this is real." He brushed a thumb along the back of her hand in a subtle gesture, grounding her. "It is real because you built it," he said. "I only helped where you asked me to." Harper held his gaze, struck again by how unwavering he was in respecting boundaries, in honoring every choice she made. "You helped without controlling," she whispered. That was the difference. And it changed everything. Before he could respond, Maddie barreled into them, hugging Elias's legs with the enthusiasm only a 7-year-old could muster. "Elias, the ribbon cutting starts soon. Mommy said you have to make a speech." Elias Mock groaned. "Remind me why I agreed to that again." "Because you love Mommy." Maddie answered simply before skipping away. Harper nearly choked. Elias reddened faintly but smiled. "She is getting bold." Harper nudged him softly. "Wonder where she gets it from?" Elias cleared his throat. "You ready?" Harper nodded. More than ready. Minutes later, the crowd gathered at the front entrance while Harper stepped up to the podium. Elias stood a few feet behind her, Maddie perched beside him on her tiptoes holding scissors far too big for her small hands. Harper took a deep breath and began. 1 year ago, my life looked nothing like it does now. I was working 2 jobs. I was tired. I was scared. And I thought survival meant hiding the parts of myself that hurt. She scanned the room of survivors, families, supporters, and board members. Then I met someone who saw the strength in the scars I tried to hide. Someone who reminded me that the things life burns away do not have to leave us empty. They can leave us open, more open to truth, more open to community, more open to starting again. She took one breath before finishing. And today, with this center, we offer that same chance to everyone who walks through these doors, because nobody heals alone, and nobody should have to. Applause swelled through the room, warm, genuine, filling her chest with something almost too big to contain. When she stepped aside, Elias approached the microphone. He was not a man who enjoyed public speeches. But today, the tremor of vulnerability beneath his composure felt intentional, even powerful. "A year ago, nobody had ever been real with me." He began, his voice steady but soft. "Not really. People saw the money, the name, or the scars, but rarely the man, rarely the human." He paused, eyes flickering briefly toward Harper, until someone finally was. The room went still in that suspended breath-held way that only truth creates, and because of her, because of Harper, and because of Maddie, I learned that honesty is not a risk. It is a gift that builds things far more meaningful than any company or headline. The center exists because of that, because truth builds, because bravery heals, and because compassion transforms. Maddie squeezed his hand proudly as he stepped away from the mic. Harper felt her eyes sting, though she blinked the tears back the moment too beautiful to blur. Then came the ribbon cutting. Harper held one side, Elias held the other, and Maddie stood between them, gripping the scissors with both hands. "On 3, Elias said. Harper nodded. Maddie shouted, 1, 2, 3, and the ribbon snapped cleanly. The crowd erupted in cheers. Cameras clicked. People clapped. And there, in the middle of it all, Maddie looked up at Elias with shy certainty and whispered, 'Daddy.' Elias froze just a second before kneeling to her height, his eyes softening with emotion that hit him too deeply to hide. 'Are you sure, sweetheart?' Maddie nodded. 'You feel like one.' Harper covered her mouth as tears finally spilled over, not from sadness, but from the quiet fullness of seeing her daughter choose love in the purest form. Elias wrapped an arm around Maddie, pulling her close, then looked at Harper over her daughter's shoulder. Harper met his eyes and whispered one soft, unwavering truth. 'We stay real. Always.' The 3 of them stood together as the applause roared on, not as billionaire and single mom, not as the subjects of a viral scandal, not as broken people trying to survive, but as a family formed through truth, through resilience, through the courage to be seen fully. And the scar along Elias's jaw caught the light again. Not a reminder of what he lost, but of what he had finally found. If this story reached you today, if even one moment between Harper Elias and little Maddie made you pause, breathe a little deeper, or remember that healing is possible even after the harshest burn, then I want to invite you to do something simple but powerful. Stay with us. Stories like this one are not just entertainment. They are reminders that honesty still matters. Kindness still matters, and the people we least expect can completely change our lives when they finally choose to be real. Maybe you saw yourself in Harper fighting through exhaustion fear and the weight of doing everything alone, yet still choosing love when trust felt risky. Maybe you recognized a piece of Elias, the man who spent years believing he was too scarred, too judged, too misunderstood, until someone finally saw him beyond what the world mocked. Or maybe you felt Maddie's courage the way children love without hesitation, offering their whole hearts long before adults believe they deserve it. If this story resonated, if it gave you a quiet moment of hope, or reminded you that your scars are part of your strength, then please help this channel grow by doing the simplest things that keep stories like this alive. First, tap like, right now. It takes less than a second, but it tells YouTube that stories built on heart and authenticity deserve to be shared. Your like truly makes a difference in helping this community grow. Second, if you want more long-form emotional romance stories, Billionaire meets Single Mom. Slow burn, second chance healing arcs, and the kind of narratives that make you feel something real, then hit subscribe and turn on the little bell icon. That one small action guarantees you never miss the next story. And trust me, there are so many more stories on the way. Stories about scars, about second chances, about unexpected tenderness, and about the quiet love that changes everything. Third, I would love to hear from you in the comments. Tell me where you are watching from. Tell me your favorite moment in this story. Tell me whether you connected more with Harper's strength, Elias's vulnerability, or Maddie's brave little heart. Your comments mean the world not just to me, but to this entire community of people who come together because we all believe love, especially honest love, is worth fighting for. Endings like this do not come from fairy dust. They come from choosing truth, choosing compassion, choosing bravery in moments that hurt. And sometimes they come from stories that remind us we are not alone in trying to figure all of this out. If you want more stories built on emotional undulation, the ups and downs, the storms and the soft places, the heartbreaks and the healing, then stay with us. This channel is for you, for your heart, your spirit, and your belief that even in a noisy, complicated world, quiet love still wins. Before you go, take one more moment to do something meaningful. Drop a comment with one word that describes how this story made you feel. One word that captures your journey through these 13 parts: hopeful, seen, brave, comforted, loved, or maybe simply real. Thank you for spending this time with Harper, Elias, and Maddie. Thank you for choosing kindness in a world that often forgets how powerful it can be. And thank you for supporting stories that reach beyond the surface. Like, subscribe, comment, stay. Because sometimes staying is the most beautiful choice of all.